It was an absolute joy to make a recent visit to Providence Hybrid Academy, a Charlotte Mason inspired hybrid homeschool program in the Lehigh Valley area of Pennsylvania, a little over an hour outside of Philadelphia. Launched in 2016, Providence Hybrid Academy was a co-op with about a half dozen families meeting one morning a week with parents there. Today, it is now a drop-off hybrid homeschool program with 145 students in kindergarten through ninth grade, with almost 50 kids on wait lists. The Providence Hybrid Academy has 15 teachers plus an additional 7 staff members and aides. And I'm so thrilled to have on the podcast today the two founders, Angie Wakeman, a former public school teacher, and Rebecca Foley, whose background is in economics and educational leadership. Angie and Rebecca, welcome to the Liberated Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
I am so thrilled to have you here. It was really wonderful to visit Providence Hybrid Academy recently and see your program in action and just see all of the wonderful sort of Charlotte Mason elements that infuse your hybrid homeschool program and make it, I think, particularly special. So I want to get into all of that and how your program runs. But first, I'd love to start with a little bit of your backgrounds. Angie, you were a teacher. Rebecca, your background is in economics and educational leadership. Let's start there. I guess we'll start with you, Angie. What was your background like? Why did you decide to get into education and become a public school teacher to begin with?
I think I wanted to be a teacher probably as long as I can remember. I made a list of, like, when I was a child, a list of things that I felt like I was good at, and then like what careers matched up with that. And teaching was on that list from the time I was a kid. So I've always loved children. And I think originally I planned to do something like preschool, and I got to college and switched to I double majored in English and Spanish and minored in secondary education. So I always knew I wanted to work with children. And I taught at actually the same high school that I graduated from in Bethlehem for, I think, about 7 or 8 years before I had my kids started having children and decided to stay home with them.
Great. And Rebecca, what about you? You have a double master's degree, one in economics, one in educational leadership. Tell us about that path.
My childhood was kind of not traditional in the fact that I went to like multiple little Christian schools. I did a correspondence high school from home. So I kind of like was shaped, I guess, by grassroots sorts of like, I didn't come from a college educated family. But my high school educated mom taught us all to read. And I went to these little schools that didn't have much money. So like, I feel like that kind of shaped my views on education. It was, I knew it didn't really have to be that complicated if you had people who like cared and you had the right books, like it really didn't take too much. So by the time I was a teenager, I was always interested in like the competition and like the free market side of education. I remember writing the scholarship application. I didn't get the scholarship, but I remember writing, describing this like school I wanted to start one day that I think looked a lot like Plumfield and Little Men, It was like, I wanted people to love to learn, because I love to learn. I think I was born loving knowledge. So I just loved it, but I saw that other people didn't. And so it always like bothered me. Even when I was a teenager, I was like, but you should all just love everything, grammar and math and books. So I started community college. I was the first person in my family to go to college. I was going to be a nutrition major, actually. And then I transferred over to a 4-year university. I spent one quarter cooking in the kitchen and was like, I do not want to do this. And I had really enjoyed my economics class in community college. So I switched over to economics, got my bachelor's degree there. And I was also taking a lot of like political science classes, because I loved that stuff. Like it was the policy and, all of that was all connected. So then I went to grad school. I moved away from home, went to grad school for economics, and was in a master's program at Lehigh University. That's how I grew up in Western New York. That's how I ended up in Pennsylvania. And then while I was finishing up my master's in economics, I was like, I really want to like study education. That's really like every time I had a chance to write a paper or anything, I would write it about education systems, Jefferson's model, of education. I did that for a class one time. So I got into the ed leadership program at Lehigh, did that for 3 semesters. I was a research assistant for them, which is, I think, why they let me in. So then that was kind of my path. I was always interested in like free market solutions to education and kids loving to learn. And I think those two, like my personal experience, and then that led me to studying it. And then as I studied it, that's what I enjoyed. But then I got married and had my first couple kids right after grad school, and kind of everything went on pause while I was with my kids for a while. Then I was facing the decision from the mom perspective a few years later. And that's where Angie and I kind of connected and started applying it to being an entrepreneur. We didn't know it at the time, but that's what we were doing.
So great. Rebecca, you and I have such a similar background
Yeah.
of my bachelor's is in economics and then my master's is in education policy. And it was the same thing. I just fell in love with economics, and then that led to my passion for education policy. So interesting that we have similar pathways there.
Yeah.
Angie, I'd love to hear from you what you spotted in the classroom in the public high school that you were working in for a handful of years. What did you notice there in terms of this sort of more conventional classroom that struck you, even maybe more so in hindsight now, running an alternative to conventional schooling?
Yeah, I think I mostly taught seniors. And so that's like its own unique age group because they're like the big man on campus. And so they've gone through their whole, like all of their years of all of the things they're supposed to have learned in an English class. But then they're also like starting to check out as they're applying for colleges or like looking at whatever's going to be next for them after high school. So, so like motivation is a little bit challenging for that age group for sure. And most of my teaching career was prior to like the introduction of cell phones into the classroom. So that was like toward the tail end, that was like a much bigger struggle. And so like definitely you can see some things with motivation and competing for attention with technology. And then I think you're seeing students who like are trying to put on the like polishing their ability to write, and some things that just never stuck. Like for 4 years, they get to senior year to teach them these things with writing, and they were like, "Oh, we didn't really get this before." And I think for myself as a teacher, I was a little bit more of like a project oriented, like experiential. I usually stayed away from things like just boring comprehension questions or true false, like the kinds of things that would be at the end of a unit. So I did have that level of freedom for most of my career to be able to bring my own style to the core curriculum. So yeah,
Can you just that's interesting that you find that you did have freedom within a public school system to have that kind of freedom and flexibility. I don't hear that too often, especially from former public school teachers who become founders. What was special about your district?
I think it's possible. I think it's possible that it's changed since I left teaching. Yeah, I mean, I know that the district where I was teaching has adopted a particular curriculum that like has everybody in lockstep reading the same thing. It's very scripted, but it was not like that really when I was teaching. So it was kind of like you had these core works that you were supposed to teach in the English classes and writing assignments, but then the rest of it was kind of up to you how you delivered it and implemented it. So I mean, just within all of the senior English teachers in my department, I don't think there were any two of us who did things the exact same way.
So then for both of you, you had your own children and started thinking about what their education would look like. Rebecca, let's start with you. What were you thinking about homeschooling them right out of the gate? Did that come a little bit later? What was that like in those early parenting days?
Yeah, I I bought the well-trained mind, I think, when my daughter was 6 months old, because I was like, someday I get to teach her to read, you know? And I was, like I said, I had a very varied background myself. So like the academics didn't intimidate me. I was cool with teaching them, you know, whatever. But for me, I had found that by the time I struggled a lot with just taking care of my kids full time. Like my brain isn't wired that way. So like I was like, I'd love to homeschool like for the academic reasons, but I don't know how I'm gonna like manage this. Like I really need like a break. Like I just really need that. And Angie convinced me to put my kids in preschool when I think they were 5 and 3 at the time. 5 and like it was my 5-year-old, I guess. And it was like a play-based preschool, and it was like 3 hours, 3 afternoons a week. And I was like, oh, I don't need that. And then it was like, I did it, I think the last week before they opened. And I was like, wow, this is actually really nice because it gave me a break, gave my daughter a place to like, you know, she enjoyed going. I could like work my other little job I had and like run errands. And I was like, this is the structure and like being able to share uh, the teaching and the social and all this stuff, just being able to share it. Like, I was like, this is really a nice balance for me. Like, this I can do. I wish it went past preschool. And I think that kind of planted um, that idea of like, if we could do like like I was teaching her to read while she was going to preschool. And that made sense to me because I could teach her at her own pace when she was home. And then she could go to preschool and she was playing and do it, you know, like doing all these other things. It didn't have to be the same thing, you know, the social, the academic. It didn't have to like all progress exactly the same. And I think that kind of like fed that idea of like, why does it all have to go together? And why can't we do this part-time? Like, why can't we have school that's part-time and you still get to customize at home with your kids? And that was kind of my like, you know, I don't think I can manage my kids 24/7. It's not healthy for all of us. But I can do it part-time and I really enjoy teaching them the academics. So
Yeah. And what about for you, Angie? You know, after you left the public school classroom, stay home with your kids, you both now have 3 children.
yeah.
What were you thinking about in terms of their education in those early days?
Public school. Oh yeah. I mean, homeschooling never once crossed my mind. When we started the preschool the same year that Rebecca's oldest daughter started, I just thought, this is what you do. You do preschool and then you do school after that. So my daughter was 4 when we started, and she does have a late summer birthday. So I just found this preschool like word of mouth sort of thing, but it was a play-based preschool. And the more time that we spent there and the more that I saw how they were doing, but then I would hear like other parents in the preschool say like, well, they're not really getting them ready for school here. So we have to do more at home. And like that pressure, the trickle down effect that parents were feeling, um, to make them feel like that what was happening in this play-based preschool wasn't enough. Kind of like bothered me because I'm like, no, this is what they should be doing. They're learning through play. But then that pressure that, you know, parents were feeling getting ready for public school. So like I started to tune into that a little bit. And I had friends who were elementary school teachers in the district. And just like all at the same time, our district went to full day kindergarten instead of half day, which just felt like a really long day to me. And I had a full day kindergarten as a kindergartner, but we had like nap time and playtime and lots of recess. And, you know, I knew there wasn't going to be a lot of recess, and that a lot of the time was going to be spent on sort of it just felt like tests were dictating the curriculum and the time spent in class. And I just have a real problem with that. So the more I started like hearing what was happening in my district, and then also just feeling like my own child wouldn't really thrive in a full day setting like that. And I think for me, like it took until I became a parent to see that like children are just naturally curious. They're born that way. They're born loving to learn and know about the world around them. And I really was afraid that that would be squashed in my child. And I did not want that. So I delayed the decision by putting her in preschool for another year because of her late summer birthday. And I think for me, it was helpful to know that there are like no other people who homeschooled. I had some friends from church who were homeschooling, and I'm like, well, I guess if they're doing it, like maybe I could. But then Rebecca and I had started talking about this part-time thing, and I was like, well, maybe I could do it if I did it part-time. And like added to the mix for all of this was that my husband was homeschooled until 8th grade. So all along he was like, "You're a teacher, you should homeschool." And I was like, "I'm a teacher, I shouldn't homeschool." So it really took a long time for me to warm up to the idea of it. And I think like I was too scared to do it alone. So we started PHA so that I wouldn't have to do it alone, which in
Yeah.
hindsight was so much more work.
So you launched in 2016 as a homeschool co-op, again with about a half a dozen families. Were you thinking at the time about this term hybrid homeschool, or were you just like, let's just get a few families together and do a co-op? I guess what was the mindset then?
Yeah, we sat down with some of the families who we thought would be interested in the co-op, and we said we're starting as a co-op this year, but the goal is the hybrid school.
Okay.
So they all knew that this was just an on-ramp for that.
And Rebecca, how did you hear about hybrid homeschools, or, what did you know about them at the time?
Um, I feel like not that much. I think I can't remember exactly how it played out, but I think we did some Googling, and I don't even remember if we knew the term hybrid when we first started, maybe. But as we started coming across some, like, we like Google searched and like came across a couple programs. Some of them were in tech, a lot of them were in the South. There were none near
Yeah.
us at all. And we were like, oh, this model does kind of exist out there somewhere. Like there's not many of them, and it looks like some meet 2 days, some meet 3 days. Some of them are calling themselves hybrid. And so we kind of just researched and gathered more information on how this seemed to be. We kind of thought we invented the idea of part-time school, and then as we researched it, we're like, well, we didn't completely invent it. Some people are already doing this, which was helpful because then we kind of stalked their websites and stuff and got ideas of how many days, what their tuition was, stuff like that. And then somewhere in there, I don't remember exactly. I think it must have been probably the summer before 2017 when we launched. Somewhere in there, when we had to choose a name, we were like, I guess we'll put hybrid in there. That seems to be what these are called. So
Yeah, it's so interesting. One of the earliest examples of a hybrid homeschool dates back to 1993 in Arlington, Texas, when a group of parents got together to launch Grace Preparatory Academy. And that one hybrid homeschool program would eventually form the foundation for the national network of dozens of hybrid homeschools known as university model schools, which is one of the more kind of prominent hybrid homeschool networks, continues to grow across the country. You're right, many of them more in the South, not as many up here in the Northeast. And so you were thinking hybrid homeschool programs, but you also were thinking about Charlotte Mason inspired hybrid homeschool programs. So you didn't want to necessarily join one of these networks or the university model. You wanted your own flavor, to the sort of the independence of your own hybrid homeschool program. Angie, I wonder if you can talk about what attracted you to the Charlotte Mason philosophy and what that approach looks like.
Yeah, I had never heard of Charlotte Mason before. I overheard somebody at our preschool talking about Waldorf and started researching that a little bit, and I really liked what I looked. So I had mentioned it to Rebecca, and she was like, "Oh, well, there's this lady who has a very similar philosophy, but she's a Christian." And so that was how I learned about Charlotte Mason. So we started reading up on her. So I think one of the things that attracted me at the very beginning was just the fact that she treats the child as a whole person. And the education is dealing with the whole person and not just the academics, but it's mind, body, and spirit. And so I just liked that holistic part of the education. I was as an English major was drawn to the good books, and uh, that children were spending time outside, playing and doing nature study. I think those were like like probably the major things that drew me to her in the first place. And then like once you start learning about her philosophy, it's just like it's it's very compelling for me anyway. I think I guess the other thing too that I felt like I was seeing that I didn't want for my kids was developmentally inappropriate practices. So how long are you spending on lessons? Are you forcing children to write tedious amounts before they're ready for it? Those kinds of things. Are they forced to sit in a chair for hours and hours a day? And so I felt like a lot of the things with her approach were developmentally appropriate. The lessons are short. She really encourages that you switch up the type of lesson so that the children are using different parts of their brain and their body from like one lesson to the next. So those were some of, I think, the main things that drew me to her philosophy.
Yeah, and when you say the good books, what does that mean?
Well, so living books are like a whole like foundational part of her philosophy, but a living book is a book that's written about a topic that is written by somebody who knows a lot about their subject. They're passionate about their subject. It's a well-written book. It's got like some literary merit to it, style, and it inspires ideas, and kind of, I think leaves a child wanting like a little more, or like that satisfactory feeling. Charlotte Mason, I think, wow, I don't know if she makes this analogy, but she talks about spreading a feast before children, and that what you take in is like nutrition for your body. And so we want our children nurturing their minds with quality things. And so, compared to like nurturing your mind with junk food. So books that aren't as quality.
Yeah, and Rebecca, what about Charlotte Mason and that educational philosophy did you find compelling?
Um, yeah, I mean, I would say it was the same things. I knew her name because I guess because I had been on the edges of the homeschool movement, when I was a kid, and I think her work was kind of resurrected by the American homeschool movement in I think the 80s. But she was actually an English teacher. So, she wasn't an American mom. She was an English teacher, but her work was resurrected. So like my mom had a series of her books. I don't know if she ever read them. I had never read them, but I knew about her. So I think as we both had investigated more into if this was the philosophy we liked, a lot of the same things resounded that Angie said, as far as, I mean, I love literature, and like I have opinions on like what's a good book and what's a book that's just like, I don't know, poorly written, like the vocabulary is not that great and it's kind of, it just doesn't read well. And I really like that part of her like the premise of what what you're teaching the kids, the idea, ideas that are inspiring new ideas, like that idea that was also, it's inspiring because it's not just about like memorizing the facts and then passing the test, like that is so not what she's teaches. But it was also like it's a lifestyle, it's not just like there's the discipline, it's the atmosphere, the life, and the discipline is what she says. And so like there's the discipline, but I liked how balanced that sounded to me, because I like to have a conversation while we're eating lunch about something, and that's like an atmosphere and a life that, and I throw the kids outside to go play, and my son was just telling me about some bug he found this morning. Like, that sounds gross, I don't want to go see that. But like there's like a life and an atmosphere that goes with the discipline of sitting down and doing the lessons. And I that's still, I still really like that well-rounded way of approaching teaching.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned Charlotte Mason being a British educator. She was born in 1842.
Yeah.
But wonderful to see her philosophy really continue to resonate today. I remember early in my homeschooling days with my little ones, just really gravitating to the Charlotte Mason ideas. And again, that focus on outdoor play and movement and literature is just really such a great educational approach, especially as I found when they were really young.
Yeah.
And so that's where it started for you when your kids were young. And now you continue to build year after year as the kids grow. So how did you go from a co-op with 6 or 7 families, one morning a week, to now this bustling 2-day a week 145 student K-9 hybrid homeschool program. How did that magic happen? Angie, what about you? Want to take that first?
I mean, the grace of God, but I think one thing that people are pretty attracted to is our clear vision. And so saying, not only do we have a hybrid model that we cater to the flexibility of homeschoolers because our families legally homeschool, we're not reporting for them. So we keep a lot of our work self-contained and they have the freedom to do what they want at home. And then also having a clear vision with the Charlotte Mason philosophy, how that was going to impact our school day, what we were going to do. I think some of those things really made a big difference. When we started, we weren't sure like who was going to come, and we thought maybe it was going to be just people from our church or from our co-op. And we did our first info night in like April. We were opening classes in August. And I thought for sure we're just going to see like some people from our church and our co-op. And I was floored by the number of people who came that we didn't know. And we were like, how did you find us? And where are you from? So some people had found us. We created a website. And one of the moms in our co-op was a photographer and ran her own business. So she really helped us with SEO stuff. And so people who were looking for anything hybrid, anything Charlotte Mason in the Lehigh Valley, our website came up first. And that was how some people found us. We posted on Facebook. And so, yeah, like we just kind of tried to think of ways to get the word out there. I think we tried to connect with some local preschools. We put together flyers. I think we sent information to like local VBSs. We were just thinking about like, where might these people be? So we did work pretty hard to get creative with how we could get information out there. But then, we also just kept saying, if we build it, they will come. And so it's kind of an act of faith as well. And they did come like, and just enough, but things like, we didn't know if we were going to have enough kids until the end of July to have one class or two. We don't know. So like some things were very last minute. But the more we've done it, the less last minute those kinds of things are. But every time we have added on, it's sort of been this question mark and act of faith, like, will people want this? Like one of the things we did was we opened a 4th to 6th grade class. And we weren't sure how that was going to be received. And it was kind of like, well, you make that plan and then you have kind of a backup plan if it doesn't work. And I think every time we started something new, it sort of had that feeling to it. So we just opened high school. We have a 9th grade class. It's small. It wasn't till like July that we knew for sure if we'd have enough kids to get it off the ground. And we got a grant, which helped. So yeah, so you put in the hard work, and make the best plans that you can. But then also it really was like God's provision in a lot of cases. So
yeah. And Rebecca, you've really grown, outgrown previous spaces. Now you have this beautiful church space, actually 2 church spaces kind of separated by a small distance from each other, lots of outdoor space, a river running through the back for the kids to play in and get muddy boots and have all of that outside time. What has it been like for you in scaling really and kind of growing from that initial early co-op with parents there to now this, well-oiled hybrid homeschool program with 15 teachers?
Yeah, I mean, it honestly, it felt like we're just trying to keep up because like after that first year when we had 20 kids in 2 classes, we never had to like advertise after that. Like our kindergarten would just fill up and we'd move the kids up. At some point we split the combined grade and we just never had to advertise. And we were always like, wow, we went from 20 to 35 to, was it 60? I think that was our first 3 years. I guess we're hiring more teachers. Like, what are we going to do? Do we combine grades? Do we go to 6? And it kind of felt, and then we outgrew our first building after 2 years and they were also changing hands. Then we had to go find another one. And it's a lot of work. I mean, because we didn't have like a host church. we're just an independent nonprofit. We didn't have anyone like behind us or anything.
Hmm.
So it was a lot of like, cold calling churches, sending emails. Churches always seem to work best because they're sitting empty, and we didn't have a huge rental budget, so and we weren't expecting to grow that fast. And we would just outgrow our buildings and have to go find something else. So the one we're in now is the third building we've been in. In, I guess it was our fourth year, if you skip the pandemic year when we had to close. So it was 2 years, 1 year, and then we're now in our third year at that building. But after the first year there, we had to add another campus. So it was kind of a like, it's almost like every year we feel like we have to go, we had to go look for a building, which was hard. That was probably one of the biggest challenges is finding the space. And then, yeah, like the boots in the creek, the kids create a mess, and it would be easy to be like, you know what, it's not worth it, but it is worth it. So, but that's all stuff we've had to work out. Like, you have to work out who's going to clean the mud in the front, who's going to, where are these muddy boots going to go? How do we get from the front door to the classroom without leaving footprints everywhere? So that's just stuff that we've had to learn. But like Angie said, having that clear vision really helps you keep focused, because like we knew what we wanted the kids to be experiencing. We wanted them to have nature study. We wanted them to have recess. We wanted them to go out in almost all kinds of weather. They have to bring their gear. That's not going to compromise, like we're going to keep that, and we'll just figure out what we got to figure out to make sure that we're still delivering that. And so we have,
Yeah. And you said, you've worked with the space to sort of be respectful and say, look, it's really important that the kids have muddy
Yeah.
boots, and that's going to create a mess. How can we work through that? And that involves, doing extra cleaning and making sure that the space is taken care of. And I think that that's just, again, a testament to your commitment to the Charlotte Mason vision and the outdoor time and all that playtime. So Angie, Providence Hybrid Academy has a statement of faith, but you were saying that you include all kinds of different families in the program. Charlotte Mason obviously is a Christian-based program. Faith is very much a part of her educational philosophy. Tell us how that fits into your community and how you draw in others who may not, sort of go to church or be a part of that faith community.
Yeah. Well, Rebecca wrote our statement of faith. And I think we both had like a pretty similar conviction that we wanted to be available to people who were looking for educational alternatives, but maybe weren't motivated by the faith aspect necessarily. Yeah, let's just leave it at that. We both felt like we don't need parents to deliver some sort of like signed statement of faith for themselves for them to come to our program. And we've worked through that since then a little bit with our board to flesh that out a little bit. So we did implement a student code of conduct, for example, that we ask parents to acknowledge that we will be holding students to these standards, in addition to something like the statement of faith. But we've told parents every year that this is the frame of work that we're working from at school, and we want you to be aware that this is what we'll be teaching. We ask that you show us respect in that, but this doesn't have to be necessarily what you believe for yourself. And so I think that's kind of where we've landed on that for now. We do require all of our board members and all of our teachers to uphold our statement of faith. So we kind of more or less like control what we can organizationally on our end with that. And then, we include Bible lessons every day. The kids are memorizing hymns and scripture as part of their memory work, and the teachers have the freedom and do enjoy the freedom to be able to help guide students in conversations around faith whenever they come up based on the book they're reading or something else that comes up.
And it's sort of a diverse composition, though, of folks that you have.
Yeah. I think our one of our staff members ran the numbers, and we've got like over 40 different denominations represented in our community. So we really do have a diverse kind of ecumenical background.
Great. So Rebecca, take us through what those 2 days on campus are like for the students participating. What are some of the core academics? What are they doing in terms of outside playtime? What is it like?
Yeah, so we're there for 6 hours. It's 9:30 to 3:15, little less than 6 hours. And the kids that I'll describe mostly the K through 6. It's a little different in the middle and high school. For the most part, they start their day with like a little memory work block where they review some of those memory things Angie was talking about, their hymn, their poem, their memory verse. And then at some point during the morning, they all go out for recess. Not all at the same time, but they all go out for recess for, I think it's about 25 minutes. We do reading. So like K through 2nd does some reading instruction, reading, spelling instruction. They do some math instruction in there. The lessons are 20 minutes, kindergarten's a little shorter, but the block, you always have to build in management and transition time. So, the block is maybe 25, 30 minutes. And the expectation is they're focusing their best, 15, 20 minutes of that time. They have nature study where we have a special nature study teacher, and she just spends her day taking out the classes for nature study. That's about a 45-minute block. They have lunch, they have snack, they have literature, history. Starting in 4th grade, we add in science as its own subject. So K through 3, they're doing nature study twice a week, I guess we threw in art there for the 3rd and 5th grade. But K through 2nd, they're doing nature study for like 45 minutes both days, and that's science. And then in 4th grade and up, we add in like a science that's also like experiments and stuff. They do geography and artist and composer study, which are also really core Charlotte Mason subjects. Those are probably some of my favorite ones to see them do, because they study 3 composers and 3 artists throughout the year, and they study their works, and they learn a little bit about their life. And those are, I don't know if they spend more than 10 minutes at like artist and composer study, but they get so much out of it, So we fit a lot into, and they also have another recess in the afternoon. So they're outside for a good hour out of those 6 hours. And then the day is very broken up so we're able to fit a lot in with our short lessons. But we always prioritize making sure that they get that playtime and the nature study time. So.
Yeah. And Angie, you told me that you love the curriculum design work, that is one of the things that you find most rewarding about this. How do you come up with a curriculum? What sort of pieces are you drawing from? How are you incorporating Charlotte Mason, all of that?
I think we started with what classes are we going to offer at school, and then I kind of scour the internet for different like artists and composers, for example. I kind of like over the years have sort of developed a little criteria for myself for like what I want to include for artist and composer or history. And so, yeah, for history, I'm just looking for books within a certain time period that are living, and that have, depending on the age group, they might be picture books or not. Geography's been a little bit of a work in progress, but we use a few different concepts from like one of Charlotte Mason. Like her method of geography is so vast, we cannot do it in 2 days a week. So there's like the whole outdoor geography component, where they're maybe learning pacing and direction and things like that. And then she did a lot with map study, like map questions, starting in like 2nd grade. And then she also incorporated like travel books and living geography books. So we've kind of like landed somewhere in the middle with a few living books and like map questions and studying places that are related to the history readings, just because the school days are so full. Yeah, I think we like kind of chose a few curricula, like core curricula as far as like reading instruction. That doesn't really line up with the Charlotte Mason philosophy there. And then trying to think what else. Yeah, I do like researching it. So like for literature, for example, so we do like one Shakespeare piece a year. So we're just picking a different Shakespeare piece out of that. And then I try to do one like classic for this is like fourth through eighth grade, and then one like modern classic. So that's kind of the criteria I've developed. And then I try to find stuff that we can get through at school, but that's like challenging. I think our first year that we had our fourth through sixth grade, we did Robin Hood, and it took them forever to get through it in class. So I've had to like learn the hard way, like what can we get done realistically in those 2 days? So I have some Ambleside Online is a really great resource. I usually check their book lists, and Simply Charlotte Mason has a book finder, Simply Charlotte Mason book finder. I usually go there looking for living books as well. And those are kind of like two places I'll start, and then yeah, branch out from there.
So I'd love to shift gears as we begin to wrap up and just hear what the future holds for Providence Hybrid Academy. I mean, you have 50 people on the wait list. You're already expanding into a second location, moving into the high school ages. What does the future hold? Rebecca, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, we are hoping to go up through 12th grade. We piloted our 9th grade this year, and that's kind of a whole different, not whole different, but it's kind of different to tackle high school. So we'll just do what we've always done and see what happens. It's exciting because you get to it is different, and when you're done, they're done. They're adults now, so it's kind of, we've had a lot of meetings talking about what that can look like. What's it going to look like in 2 days? What subjects are we offering? And we also we would love to duplicate the program because we're only there 2 days a week. So because we have such a long wait list, we could easily fill, especially like the K through second, that most of our families who are coming to us, I do like admissions and meet people every week, and most of them have young kids, little young kids, 5, 6 years old, and toddlers and babies. So we have a huge demand for like kindergarten through second. So we really want to be able to open like a Monday, Tuesday program that looks just like our Thursday, Friday. We haven't quite gotten there yet, partly because of building access, partly because of it's a jump in like staffing and all of that. But this might be the year. We'll see. We're waiting to hear a little more details. But if we can do that, we'll be able to grow another program that looks just like the one we have. We've got I guess, reputation now. People know we're here, so we could start with 3 or 4 classes and just grow them out on Mondays and Tuesdays. So we're still working out location details and all of that stuff, but hopefully sometime in the next couple of years we'll have that launched and we'll have our high school full. So we will see.
That's great. I'll just a follow-up question for you, Rebecca. Do you ever have parents say, "Oh, could you add a third day?" Or are there those kinds of requests too? And I guess how does that fit in with your overall model?
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, I've heard that for sure. I don't feel like I hear a whole lot of it. I feel like we kind of have we've always had this kind of split between the people who would homeschool without us, and the people who wouldn't homeschool if it weren't for us. So you kind of have this, as far as our current families, you have the people who probably would like a little more school time, and then you have the people who are like, well, 3 days would be, I wouldn't really feel like I was homeschooling anymore. I wouldn't have enough time to get through this stuff. So we've certainly heard that. I think we've already kind of brainstormed what it would look like to have like a third day that was more of an optional enrichment day, where we could fit in some of those things we just cannot fit in 2 days. But it would probably be like optional. It wouldn't be a 3-day program, because right now you either sign up for the 2 days or you don't come. It's not like a pick and choose thing. Our high school, where you can take a class for high school, but for the rest of the program, it is what it is. And so a third day would probably be more of an optional add-on day for the people who wanted it. But I don't think we hear a whole lot of it, but that could be.
Just one last thing, Rebecca, what is your tuition for the 2-day program annually?
Our tuition is $2,800 a year.
Yeah. So it's a more financially accessible model for families. They can continue to have that family time and do their own sort of independent homeschooling the rest of the week, but have that structure, that break that you said was so helpful for you as a homeschooling mom. and all of that community piece as well.
Yeah.
So great. So Angie, if listeners and viewers are inspired by what you have created, and want to do something similar, what advice would you have for them?
Thought a little bit about this question. I think it's easier for me to speak if somebody were like a former teacher,
Yeah.
but I would say develop a vision and your why and stick to it. I think you have a lot of decisions you have to make, and so having that clear vision and why you're doing what you're doing, it will help you with making those decisions. I think having solid business planning is essential. So if you're somebody like me who just has a heart for education and teaching, but that's not your skill set, I would seek out help for that. Um, and then I guess I would say I think two things are true. So you can't do it all yourself. So get help where you need to get help, and bring in people who have strengths to balance out your weaknesses. But then also work on developing yourself and areas that are difficult for you, building out, developing your skills and your mindset. So if I did not expect to be in this position in my life ever. um, and so it's been for me important to develop like how do you lead a group of people. So I think those would be like the biggest things that I would recommend to somebody who wanted to start.
Great. And Rebecca, I'll ask you, what have you found most fulfilling, most gratifying about being an education entrepreneur?
Well, from my entrepreneurial heart, I really like seeing like kind of a new solution, like and seeing people come to it. Like that's just very rewarding for me to like see how much we've grown, and just apparently people needed this, like that first year we didn't know, we thought, well, we kind of want this, and some of our friends seemed to like the idea, but we didn't know that we were going to have hundreds of families just kind of come out of the woodwork in the Lehigh Valley and want this that didn't exist. It just didn't exist. So that's very rewarding to my like free market, heart to just see that you can just couple of moms with a baby on one hip, we just were like, we want this. I wonder if anyone else did. And you just put the work in, and other people wanted it. And there was a gap there. So I find that very rewarding. And, when you're there in the building and you're watching the kids play outside and listening to them sing their hymn, your heart warms because you're like, this is the kind of education I want for my kids, that I want for my kids, that seeing them out playing and excited to go to school every week. And that's always very, in the community and the friendships that they have, it's just rewarding to see that that's what was created. So,
oh, so great. Angie, anything you would add to that in terms of the rewards of entrepreneurship?
I have friends who will text when we have a snow day and be like, my kids are in tears that they don't get to go to school because school was closed because of snow. And it's like, yes, that's what school should be. They should want to be there. And so, yeah, that's like one of the most gratifying things to hear.
Maybe not your high school seniors in the public school. They might not have been sending you those same texts. So yeah, but that's a common theme I hear all the time from microschool founders and the parents and learners that they're serving is these are joyful places. The kids want to be there. They dread vacations and weekends because they love the program so much. So I think that it's again a testament to all of the great work that you're doing and the gap that you're filling, as you said, Rebecca. So as we wrap up, how can my listeners and viewers learn more about Providence Hybrid Academy and follow your progress?
We have a website, providencehybridacademy.org, and we have a Facebook page and also an Instagram page.
Wonderful. Well, best wishes. I'm looking forward to following along and seeing more growth and more families served by Providence Hybrid Academy in the coming months and years. So Angie, Wakeman, Rebecca Foley, thank you so much for being on the Liberated podcast.
Thank you,
thank
Carrie.
you.